Hi, and welcome back to Learning Microsoft Project, the full course. So we're continuing on with our introduction to Microsoft Project and the important parts of Microsoft Project. And now we're going to move on to the important task fields within Microsoft Project and what they are. But before we actually go into what the task fields are, let's start talking about what is a task and what is defined by a task. Well, a task is a definition is a unit of work for a project that is limited to a specific time period and has a product as a result. So it specifically should have something that actually is a result of that particular task, and it's something that's done within a project. It commonly, when we talk about a task, it's not something that happens for a very long time or for a very short time. So when we talk about a task, I like to use the rule that it takes anywhere between 8 and 80 hours to complete this particular task. So that's anywhere between a day or um, or basically 2 weeks to accomplish this task. So I'm going to give some examples of what is not a task and what are tasks. So let's talk about what are not tasks first. So in terms of the things that are not tasks, and we want to list out these things and just say, okay, why aren't these particular tasks? For instance, perform project management. It's a long duration task. It really doesn't have any type of product that comes out of that. So if you're gonna yes, you are gonna be performing project management for a project, but it's really not a task. It's work that's going to be done, but it's not really a task. And I'll give an example of what exactly is a task for that. But another one is code software. Well, that sounds like it might be a task. However, that may not be too defined enough in terms of what is actually going to be performed during that work. So you might want to actually define that a little bit more in terms of what's going to be coded. For instance, another one is monitor testing. Now, I understand that we're going to be doing testing, and there's sometimes where you actually have to monitor the testing and oversee the testing, and just be a person that watches and makes sure that things are happening. But that's not really a particular task. There's no product that comes out of that. Another one also is train users. Now, that may seem like a task. However, that's not defined enough, and it's similar to the code software. It's just not defined enough. So let's look at some examples of how we can actually use that and turn those into tasks. So for instance, our perform project management, while we might want to break that down somewhat, we might want to develop a PM plan. That may be one of our tasks that we can have for that work. On the code software, we might want to just define one particular task that we're going to do for that. We're going to develop the code for the RTDA defects 10 through 15. So that's a particular task that we can do. Monitor testing. Well, and rather than monitor testing, we're gonna conduct a briefing at the initiation of the testing, so that would be a task. Train users. Well, there's a lot of things that you have to do with training. You might have to develop a presentation. You might have to do a lot of other things, coordinate users, and to actually who's going to actually go to the testing. But one of the tasks that you might want to do is conduct the on-site user training session. So that's a particular task. So let's go on to what are the fields for going with task. So first thing is, what is it? What are we going to do? So it's a task name. Just give it a name. But a name should have an action associated with it. So to make sure it does have an action associated with it. Dates, important dates, and how long is it going to take. So the start date, the finish date, any type of duration, and the duration is measured in days. What are we going to use to accomplish this task? So the things that we're going to use are called resources, and they could either be people or material. So we're going to talk about those as well. Next, how much is this going to cost? And that's simply just a cost number. It's actually, the field is called cost. So that's pretty straightforward. What needs to be done beforehand? What do we need to actually have done before we actually start this task? So, and that's called a predecessor within Microsoft Project. So a predecessor action, and what follows this task. So anything that follows this task that is affected by this task, that we're going to be working on, it's called a successor. So let's take a look at how this will look in Microsoft Project. In Microsoft Project, this is a specific task. So we have a task name right here on the left. Then we have the time and date information. So we talk about there's a duration, there's the start, and there's the finish. So we have the start and finish dates. So it's the time and date information associated with the task. Then we have what I termed the influences. So whatever is the predecessor, what happens before. Successor is anything that happens after. And this is, you'll see numbers here, 9 and 13. So those are by task line. So whatever's on line 9 happens before this particular task that we're looking at. And whatever's on line 13 is affected by the task that we're working on right now. And then we have the particular type of resource names that we're going to be using on this project. So there might be particular resources, people that we use, or it may be material. So it could also be material. So we have who or what we're going to use as resource names. And then cost is just simply cost. So that's how much it's going to cost to actually accomplish this task. Now there's another field that we also want to talk about, and that's work. Work is how many hours it takes to do the task. So if it's, if it takes you 24 hours to do the task or anything, it's indicated at work. We talked about before was duration. So this is another field that is important within Microsoft Project. You can estimate this work field and say, well, it's going to take me 24 hours or whatever it's going to take to do the work, and put this into the task as well. But usually you'll work with durations and have the work computed out for you. But you can also use work if you know how much work it's going to take. So let's take a look at what work looks like within Microsoft Project. So in that particular task that we had before, we had conduct the IRD review, and we said it was going to take 5 days, and we used 3 people to do that review. So work is calculated in this particular example by taking these 5 days and having those 3 people. So you have 5 days times 3 people and 8 hours a day, and that equals 120 hours. So that's how work is computed. We could have actually put in work as a field as 60 hours to do this. So these people would have been working over 5 days. Maybe they would have worked half a day each day to conduct the review. So that would be another way that you can actually do this. So right now, that's another field that's important within Microsoft Project. So those are the important fields within Microsoft Project and for task. But there are other fields that are within Microsoft Project. There's a whole bunch of fields, and they're all, and I have them listed in terms of and defined within the handout and the files. But I want to work with these particular fields in this course, and those are going to be the primary fields. And I'll be covering some of the other fields as well. So I do recommend that you take a look at the file and look at the other fields that are listed there as well. And that's it. And I see you next time.